Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today I'm showing you a car that many of you may remember. It is the Singer Gazelle Series V. Now you may not know this, but they made 20,000 of these, well just over, they made 20,022, and yet it's a car that you just never see anymore. It was once all over the roads, towns and cities of Great Britain and various other places too, and yet now, when did you last see one? You tend to see like the earlier ones, the later ones, but the Series 5, I can't think of the last time I spotted one. Now in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a survivor. This car hasn't been restored and dolled up within an inch of its life like a corgi toy model. This bears all its battle scars. So you might see a bit of paint loss today, you might see a bit of wear and tear, but this is a classic car which is used, loved and enjoyed daily, which we don't know how long we're here for. That is how we should be using our classic cars. So in today's video, I've got the enormous pleasure of showing you the Singer Gazelle Series V. Bang! The story of Singer, the Singer brand, sitting under roots begins in the mid-50s. In 1954, the company, Singer, aren't in the best financial position, and partially this was due to their strategy after the end of the Second World War. The company had, like many, been depleted by the war efforts and had come back to market with the same pre-war models, just with improved engines and boxes. Now this wasn't unusual, other manufacturers had done this too, but they seemed to be less impacted than Singer. There was some development, of course, with the SM 1500, which then came in to replace these older cars. But the fussy production line in their factories, which was positioned over different floors in the same factory. So on level 1, you've got body, on level 2 you've got paint, and so on, and a tepid public response to the car meant the company just wasn't in the best financial health. Now it is worth remembering that the world was very different from the late 40s. The 1948 Motor Show really changes the game, brings in cars like the Morris Minor, the 2CV, the Land Rover. Now these may have not been direct competition, but it does change the public mood. The public now want considerable change, advancement, technology, and look, Singer just weren't giving them that. However, for Roots, it was a completely different story. They didn't share this lack of success, and in fact they had an 11.7% market share in the early mid-50s, and they eyed up Singer to add to their portfolio. Roots take it on, takes a few months to get it all over the line, and then they spend considerable time reorganising every inch of Singer, and it cost them £600,000 in money back then in loss in their first year to do this, but by the end of the 50s they're back swinging and making profits. And partially it's because they were really quick around what they did first of all, and their first decision was, what did they do with the cars? Well, they looked at the 1500 engine they had with Singer and they said, yeah, we can carry on using that in the new car. But the body shell had to dramatically change, and they'd been working with Lowy over in America, and with this you get the 1956 Singer Gazelle. And the Singer is positioned fairly high in the Roots range. It sits just below Humber and Sunbeam, and the new medium-sized car was available either as a convertible or a four-door saloon, with the Series 1 selling nearly 4,500 units. Time marches on and the car continues to be improved and refined, and of course, as many of you will know, it shares the same upgrade schedule as the Hillman Minx, which underpin the technology that you see in the Gazelle by this point in production. Now I know that some people are just going to say, well Steph, it's just badge engineering, but look, many other examples of badge engineering that we can look at from companies like BMC are simply slapping a badge on the same body shell and just popping in some different seats and calling it a day. If you look at the Gazelle, it does look quite different in many different ways. I mean, you've got the different interiors, you've got the different bodies, you've got the fronts. I mean, it does make getting body panels a nightmare, but hey, look, the Gazelle looks and feels very different to the Minx. It feels classier and a more well-appointed car, which was exactly what Roots wanted to achieve. Now by the Series 5, as we're testing today, which was introduced in August of 1963, there's a lower roofline, larger rear doors, the rear fins are removed, and the look of the back end is revised. You get a really neat rear light cluster. You also get those 13-inch wheels and an update to the interior. Although the production of the Series V stops in 1965, the last Gazelle, an Arrow Series 7, rolls off production line in spring of 1970. And with that, the Singer name ceases to be used by Chrysler, who now had control of the Roots business. In my opinion, it's a sad ending to what was a much loved motor and a wonderful brand. A real shame. Coming inside the Singer Gazelle Series V, you'll notice that the dash looks very different to the other Singer Gazelles that have come before it, because they started putting this wood. They then have the door cappings as well, and all in all, it looks like a far more expensive car, I think, than it actually was. Because remember, in the Roots lineup, it sits sort of in the middle. So you've got that Hillman Minx, which is your entry point, and of course, very much the basis for this car. You come up to this, so this is like your next level up, and then if you've got a few quid, you can go for a Sunbeam Rapier. They are delicious. I always feel like if you meet a Sunbeam Rapier owner, they've always owned lots of them and they're just so converted. I've not driven one yet, so if you've got one, let me know because I'd like to drive one. Anywho, coming inside, there is an awful lot on offer for a 1960s car that wasn't billed as absolute luxury. So first of all, we've got a decent sized glove box, which is full of, well, I did say it was a daily driver, so we've got all sorts in there, including mini eggs. I did wonder where my mini eggs had gone, and various other bits and pieces, including the handbook. Coming across from there, you've got your choke, you've got your panel lights. And we've talked about panel lights before, so if you're new to the channel, I'll explain. Way back when, and when people used to drive cars, classic cars, there used to be the option to turn the panel lights on and off. And the idea was that at night, whilst the driver was out in the ether, he or she may become distracted by the dash being lit up. And so you had the option to turn it off so that essentially everything is just full blackout and you only get what's in front of you. Personally, I've never been distracted by a classic car dash, but it shows you how far we've come in many ways from being able to turn out the panel lights on something like this through to today's infotainment system, which for me, I don't know about you, but I find modern systems really overwhelming. The way they're all on all the time, everything's blinking, flashing, beeping. I don't like it. It's one of my biggest problems with modern cars. Coming across from there, you've got your Roots Group badge in the middle. Now, I've talked about these before, and I think this was something you could take out and pay for an optional upgrade clock. But there'll be somebody in the comments section that knows that for sure. Coming across from there, you've got your lights. So you've got your side and your head, you've got your wipers. Now I can never remember if these are single or twin speed. We'll have a look together. Nope, single speed. But that's what you kind of expect for something of this age. Unless you were going for mega money cars, you were getting that single speed wiper. Coming across from there, we've got the heater control panel. All I can tell you is this car is so warm, and the heater, it all blows out down here, but the car warms up so quickly. It does have a screen functionality up here, but it's quite small, and again, that works effectively as well. Really cannot complain about that, and I love complaining. Coming across from there, you've got your screen wash button. And then you've got your gauges in front of you. So over on your left hand side, you've got your speedo. Now I was talking to you earlier about that engine, that 1600 engine. Top speed on this, as advertised, is 80 miles per hour. Now you might say to me, well Steph, that doesn't feel like very much. And I would agree. I would have thought by this point, now I know if you go for the next series along, I think it's the Series 6, you do get that 1725cc engine, whereas in this they're still carrying that 1600, which has been in use, I think, since the Series 3C. I think that's when they introduced it. But really, this is the last hurrah for that engine being in here, and it does, for me, it does hold it back somewhat. That, the lack of overdrive and the no synchron first, but I'm being really, really picky. Anyway, coming across from there, you've got your fuel gauge. Now, if you look back at brochures of the time, I think it's 24.6 miles per imperial gallon, which for a lot of us, you can be like, well, what does that mean in real terms? Well, I asked Paul, the owner of the car, and I said, what do you think you're getting? And he said, around town, it's probably 30, low 30s. Once I'm out on a decent run, it's up at around 36 miles per gallon, which, again, I hope you might get a little bit more, but it is a big car, isn't it? You know, you're not going to be, well, it feels a big car. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because if you see it next to a modern SUV, it doesn't feel big at all. But when you're inside it, it feels so roomy, which is one of the big selling points about this car. But we're going to talk about those back doors in just a minute. Coming across from there, you've got your ammeter, you've got your oil pressure gauge, and you've got your water temperature gauge there as well. Again, all fantastic to have in a car. Really lovely modern feature. And it just makes the whole driving experience a lot more pleasurable because you get to see what's going on. Because remember, in the 50s, you're not guaranteed stuff like that. Mostly you're just getting your speedo and you're getting your fuel gauge when you just go for a family run around. You've also got your little light up here for your indicators. Now this steering wheel, I don't know about you at home, but I think this is majestic. I love this design where you get the chrome ring in the middle for your horn, which I'll show you. Hold on. That horn sounds exactly like, and you might have to be my age or have had children that are my age, sounds like the Playdays horn, you know, when you used to watch the bus go along. BBC programme for anybody that's watching from abroad, but you can probably look it up on YouTube after you've watched this video. Now, coming in the centre of the steering wheel, which by the way, this centre does sometimes pop out, so I hope to goodness it doesn't pop out on me today, you'll see a little scene inside, and you might be wondering what that is. And I got teased about this because I felt quite passionate about it. Kev taught me this. These are the 3 spires of Coventry, and I can't for the life of me remember what the other 2 are, but one of them is the bombed out cathedral. So this, I mean, I'm not going to go on and on and on, but during the war, Coventry essentially had its very own blitz. It was horrendous. It happened in one of the Novembers, and I apologise, it's terrible of me that I can't remember which year it was. I think it's either 42 or 43, and pretty much all of Coventry gets razed down to the ground because that's where all the industry is, the manufacturing hubs, everything is all around there. And so they come in, the enemy comes in, takes it all out. Absolutely horrendous. Great museum attached to the bombed out cathedral, which teaches you all about it. But this is what these 3 spires are, because these cars were made in Coventry. And so just a little bit of a history lesson for you there. Now, I don't know about you, but I think the layout inside of this is marvellous. There's so much room around you, and recently on a video, in the Alpha 155 video, I talked about cars being disability friendly. Now, if you've ever got in an earlier Gazelle, you'll know that the doors are slightly smaller than these, and you might have struggled to get in the back. However, if you go for one of these, the doors open wider. So what they did was they adjusted the roof line on these. That's why you don't get the same back window as well. So if you look at an earlier one, you get that 3-piece back window, which is such an attractive feature, and it's a real shame that they lose it at this point and they go for that kind of regular back window. It, for me, removes some of the beauty in the earlier designs, but no, I'm not on the design team, I can't critique it all. And what they do get instead is you get the slightly wider doors that open better, and so therefore if you're looking at one of these and thinking, I'm not very mobile, I struggle to get in and out of stuff, the doors do open quite wide. So again, I thought I'd point that out because a lot of people liked having that pointed out to them in the recent Alpha video. Now that's all of the controls up there. Coming down to here, we have a rather 70s detail. We have an 8-track player. Now you probably are going to be spotting 8-tracks all over when we're looking around the car. There is quite a selection now. There wasn't when Paul bought the car, but we've acquired them from car boot sales, auto jumbles, all over the shop. I think probably the most diabolical is Rolf Harris that came with the car, and the most exciting is probably Elvis. We did have a look at the kinks today, but it wasn't in the right box, so didn't end up coming home with that. It's 4 forward speed on this. Now, I know that if you are looking at one of these, I think even later on towards 65, you start getting synchron first in these. So the earlier ones are these, and this is an earlier one, so it's early 64. You don't have synchron first, which is such a shame. It just makes it easier, I think, when you're crawling along in traffic and you're trying to navigate round. But it's one of those small things, and it shows that the company were thinking about improvement even as they went along. Every single year they did something to uplift these models, which I think is so forward thinking, and that was one of the changes they did. Along with, you might have been expecting to see reclining seats, but the earlier, I think it's, I can't remember when it changes. It's at some point in 1964, not long after this one is sold, the seats change over to reclining. So these are fixed back, but if you go for a later one, they may not be, even though it's Series 5. It makes the brochures really strange as well, because if you go and look at a brochure for one of these, to match this car, you have to go for an early brochure when they came out, rather than when they're at the tail end before they move on to the Series 6. Confused? I bet the buying public were too at the time, but it's one of those things. We've talked about this before in things like the Minx videos. You can't fault the Roots Group in terms of evolution and trying to stay one step ahead of the competition. They don't rest on their laurels. They keep revising, refining, and in my opinion, they come out with some of the best cars on the market. It is a real shame that Chrysler didn't carry on doing what they should have been doing with these, but that is a moan for another day. Now, I know you want to hear what this engine sounds like, so let's get it started up. We're not going to need any chokes, we've been out for a little drive already. One of the things about this car is it's so quiet. Turn this heater off. Have I turned it off? Hold on, it's got the little clip down here. Have a little listen from the back, and then I'll take you out for a drive in this absolutely majestic car. Right, let's go on an adventure. Oh, how lovely. We've got British weather for this British driving experience. Anyway, I don't know about you, but every time I get into a Roots car, I'm just reminded that they really cared about the quality of their products. Now, when I was doing some reading and some research this video, I was reading that Lord Roots, up until his death in 1964, for every new model, he would personally take it out and critique it before it went out, because he genuinely cared so much about what people were driving. And that's something that I just don't think that you see so much anymore, where the head of the company is so personally invested and feels that their personal reputation is so ensconced in the product that goes out to market. It's a real quality, I think, that's missing nowadays from products that are released out there for customers. Now, as you drive along, you'll note that there really are no rattles, bangs, knocks, things that you might expect to see in a vehicle of this age, and that I think people always expect in a classic car. And also, as we come over all these potholes and all the nonsense that's in the road, you'll note that the car takes it all in its stride. It's absolutely wonderful. And something else that came in for this model of the car, and no, it's not seat belts, they were still an optional extra. If you've noted that I'm not wearing any, there aren't any fitted to the vehicle. No, the thing that came in as standard on these was discs to front. Now, if you've ever driven a classic car on drum brakes, you'll know that discs are a nice to have in modern traffic. We were only talking about this earlier today when someone just pulled in front of us at speed without looking behind them. You can drive easily on drums in modern traffic, but discs are certainly a nice to have. Now, something else that came in for this model as well that we should probably talk about is the fact that you could get an auto. Now, it was the Borg-Warner 3-speed, I think, that you could get. Was it Type 35? That's what you got on these. But this, of course, we have got that 4-speed manual. Now, you'll see that I'm changing gear quite easily. I've been able to since got the vehicle. It can feel quite notchy if you've never driven through a roots box before. When you first get into it, it can feel quite different to some of the other things like the BMC vehicles. There's a lot more travel between third and fourth, I think, in some of the BMC stuff than there is in this. It all feels very close together on this. However, it doesn't impede the driving experience. It is lovely and it feels luxurious even today. There are cars that I've taken out that would have cost far more back in the day than this, that don't drive as nicely as this does. This is so very pleasurable, and it makes you realise why so many people still talk so highly about roots cars even today, after the names that were so familiar to many, Humber, Hillman, Singer, that are now gone. You say Singer to somebody nowadays, they don't think of a car, do they? They sadly think of a sewing machine, and no, they're not the same thing. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking, Steph, there aren't that many left, but I really want one, or even another Gazelle of a different era, and you're thinking, there's not that many left, what's it like for parts, what am I going to do, how am I going to get on with it? Look, the support for these is marvellous in terms of not only trying to find bits and pieces. People have been wonderfully supportive when Paul has been out looking for parts for this, but also in terms of a club community. So you've got the Singer clubs, and they are just a marvellous, friendly bunch of people that will help you out if you're looking for something, but also some of the wider roots groups that are on Facebook as well. Some really great people on there, really friendly people that you can chat to, bounce ideas off. When we needed some bits for this quite urgently, we were able to go onto the groups, ask the questions, and people came back within 24 hours with not only the parts but also the advice. Because as I was talking to you earlier about how it's shared with the Hillman Minx, it's a massive uptick in terms of being able to get the parts as well, because everything that's shared, all the commonalities, especially things like the engine, you're able to get the parts a lot easier than something that was built where everything is unique to that particular car. That is one of the big plus points. Now, we're sitting at around 50 now, and you'll be able to hear that a fifth gear or an overdrive would have been a lovely addition to this car. I think on the later ones of these, you can get it as an optional extra. There's a few various bits and pieces that you can get as optional extras. But again, it depends what year you buy it, when you're looking. Everything changes very, very quickly. So I think it's for the later fives, and then I think from the Series 6 you can as well. But of course you get that 1725cc. Everything is very changeable as you go through the range. But even though we have only got 4 forward gears and you put your foot down there, we're keeping up with everything. We're doing 50, which is the speed limit along here. So really, do we need anything more? I don't think so. And we can hold a conversation perfectly well. And of course it's noisier than a modern car, but look, it's a classic car. Of course it is. You would expect it to be, unless you're going for something incredibly high-end like a Rolls Royce. Now I'm trying to think what you may not like or may put you off slightly. But of course, we haven't got the overdrive, pointed that out. I'm trying to think what else might put you off. I don't know really, because you've got so much room around you, and you've still got that bench seat feel to this, with these two wide front seats so close together. Now I will say that for me, that's a massive uptick in these, is that they are enormously comfortable when you're out driving. The seats are sumptuously well upholstered. They're not only well upholstered to the back, so really accommodating for your back, especially if you're a bigger person, but also the base where you're putting your bottom, really well upholstered. You're not feeling those springs come through. Everything's well put together on the seat, and if you're a larger person, you're not going to find that your bottom's hanging off the sides, which can be really uncomfortable. And in fact, I think that you could be quite large and sit on these seats and feel quite at home and quite comfortable. And because you've got all this room around you, you can be quite tall as well. I personally always have to sit on this little pad because I've done my coccyx in, and if I sit on a seat directly, it can just feel so uncomfortable. But even I've driven this without the pad, it is bearable. And I would say that 9 times out of 10, most cars are not bearable for me unless I have got this pad. So I will say that the seats are rather marvellous. And because they're so wide and they're so comfortable, you get inside, and even though it's not an enormous vehicle by modern standards, you feel like you've got so much room inside, so that when it is described as a family saloon of the era, it does feel like you could put your whole family in it. Although you might want to be putting some seat belts in before you take little ones out in the back. But again, the way that it is set up all through the back means that you can fit seat belts into the rear quite easily. You won't find that's something that you're going to struggle with doing. And I'm trying to think of anything else that I need to tell you before I go. I love driving this car. I've borrowed it many a time, and in fact I'm borrowing it tonight. I've swapped it out for the convertible. So yes, variety is the spice of life. I am very lucky because I'm going to be borrowing this car tonight, and I'm going to be having lots and lots of fun with it. If you're thinking about one of these and you're looking at one on eBay, look, life is short. Have fun in a great car. I think you'll enjoy it. It drives like something, in my opinion, that's far more modern than an early mid-60s car. It stands up well even in today's traffic. It's comfortable inside. There's enough room to be taking you, your mates and all your luggage. And for me, it's a very versatile classic car that can be used, enjoyed and savoured for every adventure. I hope if you're looking at one, you will get one. They are great. I'm trying to think of another negative, and I'm really struggling to find one, because even though I've never owned one personally, I think Roots Group cars are quality through and through, and I think if you get into the driving seat of one, you will enjoy it just as much as I have. Now, all the details for the club are in the description box below if you wish to join, or you wish to contact somebody and find out a bit more before buying one, or get some assistance in buying one. And until next Sunday, when we're looking at something else, take care and drive safely.